The mahogany conference table gleamed beneath the crystal chandelier as I took my usual seat, far from the power players, exactly where they preferred to keep me. The Whitmore Trust building still cast an imposing shadow over the city, its marble columns and gilded elevators meant to intimidate. But I'd been walking its halls since I was 18. Now, 13 years later, I knew exactly why I'd been called in. At the head of the table sat my father, Charles Whitmore III, stoic, polished, every inch the legacy titan in his custom-tailored suit. To his right, Marcus, the heir apparent, adjusted his cufflinks like they came with his Harvard MBA. Next to him, Victoria posed more than sat, wrapped in designer labels and smug entitlement. And then there was me, Isabella Whitmore, in my off-the-rack blazer and shoes meant for walking, not for display, the family outlier, the so-called disappointment. "Thank you all for coming," my father began, his voice carrying that familiar mix of control and condescension. "We have pressing family matters to address." Of course we did. I'd already heard the whispers, Marcus's not-so-secret calls, Victoria's performative concern. Their campaign had been circulating through the family grapevine for weeks. My unorthodox lifestyle was apparently a threat to the dynasty. "The Whitmore Trust has sustained this family for generations," Dad continued, opening a sleek leather folder. "With that legacy comes a duty, a code of conduct that some have clearly forgotten." Victoria nodded, as if being chauffeured to Pilates counted as upholding family tradition. "And unfortunately," he went on, his tone sharpening, "some members of this family have chosen paths that reflect poorly on our name. Reckless independence, unapproved associations, an unwillingness to contribute to the family business." Marcus leaned in, smirking. "Maybe just say it, Dad." My father didn't flinch. He pulled a few official documents from the folder. "Isabella, your refusal to align with family expectations has left us no choice. As of today, you're removed from the family trust. No more monthly stipends, no financial support, no inheritance." They expected a reaction. Silence stretched, weighted and intentional. Victoria's eyes sparkled, barely hiding her glee. Marcus tried to feign solemnity, but his eyes gave him away. "There's more," Dad added. "The trust fund set to transfer to you at 35 will now be absorbed and divided between Marcus and Victoria. They've demonstrated a commitment to the Whitmore legacy." I looked at them, all three waiting for my collapse, my surrender. They were used to control. They thought money equaled leverage. I reached for my phone. Victoria bristled. "This is serious. Isabella, show some respect." "I am," I said, unlocking my screen. "Actually, this is perfect timing." Marcus scoffed. "What, you're finally going to face reality?" I held up my phone, the screen facing them. My checking account glowed with a figure that made Victoria's smile vanish. Dad frowned. "What are we looking at?" "One of my accounts," I replied calmly. "The smaller one." Marcus blinked. "That's not possible. You work at some charity. You drive a decade-old Honda." I swiped to my savings. The number climbed. Victoria's voice cracked. "Where did that come from?" I didn't answer. Instead, I opened my laptop and connected it to the room's screen. "I think it's time I showed you something," I said, loading the presentation I'd quietly prepared for this exact moment. The screen came alive with a clean logo and sleek graphs. "This is Meridian Financial Services," I explained. "I started it 8 years ago with $50,000 and a small team." Dad leaned forward. "Meridian? I've never heard of it." "You wouldn't have. We manage discrete portfolios for clients who value privacy more than press." I clicked the next slide. Our client list filled the screen: Fortune 500 companies, government contracts, global institutions. And for the first time that morning, the room went completely, truly silent. High net worth individuals who didn't want their wealth strategies traced. That was Meridian's specialty. Marcus was peering over his glasses, forehead wrinkled. "Isabella, why are you showing us this?" "Because," I advanced to the next slide. The ownership structure appeared on screen. "I founded Meridian. I own it. And for the past 5 years, it's quietly generated enough income to fund something rather unexpected." Victoria's complexion turned ghostly. "Fund what?" I smiled and clicked again. A complex chart filled the screen: financial pathways, account numbers, Payment trails. Bold letters topped the diagram. Whitmore family expense analysis, past 5 years. This, I said evenly, is how your lifestyle has actually been funded? Silence fell like a thunderclap. They leaned in, scanning the flowchart. Clean arrows connected Meridian's accounts to shell entities, anonymous transfers, and then, straight into the accounts that powered their lives. The rent on Victoria's Manhattan penthouse. I pointed. Red laser dot landing precisely. Client account 7749. Victoria gasped, audibly. Marcus's Tesla lease, his kids' school tuition, his wife's monthly Saks account, client 8851. Marcus clutched the table like it might vanish beneath him. Dad's country club dues, Mom's endless charity events, even the payroll for your staff. I looked directly at him, all of it, paid by Meridian. I let the silence stretch before dropping the next piece. The truth is, the Whitmore Trust has been bleeding out for over a decade. Outdated portfolios, poor oversight, and unchecked spending reduced it to break even years ago. Dad's face drained of color. That's not possible. The reports show exactly what I directed the accounting firm to show, enough liquidity to maintain your illusion. But behind the curtain? I advanced the slide again. The real balance sheets appeared harsh, unforgiving, undeniable. Without Meridian quietly supplementing your lifestyle, this family would have collapsed financially 3 years ago. Victoria stood so fast her chair screeched across the floor. You're lying. This is some twisted power play. Is it? I pulled up another document. Here's the rental contract for your apartment, paid annually, in advance, by Aurora Holdings. That's a Meridian subsidiary. She sank back down like her strings had been cut. I thought Dad was paying for it. Dad thought the trust was paying. The trust thought it was from strategic investments. In reality, no one was paying attention. Marcus finally managed a question. Why would you do this, and not tell us? I looked at him, really looked at him. Because every time I tried, you laughed. You called me idealistic, irresponsible. Every suggestion I made, every concern I raised, was dismissed because I didn't wear a Rolex or brag about market yields. That old conversation with Dad flashed through my mind. I was 25. I had just uncovered the first signs of collapse. He patted me on the head like I was a child and said, "Leave the money to the grown-ups." That's when I made a decision. I continued, let you crash and burn, or quietly build a structure that would hold this family up even if you never acknowledged it. I advanced one more slide, Meridian's current portfolio. Meridian manages just over $800 million in assets. My personal net worth is approximately $120 million, though, of course, that fluctuates. The room was so quiet I could hear the faint ticking of Dad's antique wall clock. Marcus whispered, stunned, "You've been funding us?" Literally, the homes, the cars, the vacations, the wine cellars and wellness retreats. I've paid for it all with dividends from companies I founded. Not with your trust, with my work. Dad slowly removed his glasses, hands shaking. How long have you known about the trust's decline? 6 years. I brought it up 5 years ago. You told me I didn't understand old money. They all did. Every time I tried to bring something real to the table, they acted like I was just playing business. Victoria was frantically checking her phone, but everything still worked. Credit cards, accounts, balances, all sustained by auto transfers from entities they never thought to question. I kept everything functional. Your reputations, intact. Your lifestyle, untouched. Your dignity, preserved. Marcus looked at me, quiet now. But why, Isabella? After everything, why protect us? I paused. The question hung in the air. Because we're family, I said. I didn't like how you treated me, but I wasn't going to punish you for being blind. You weren't malicious, just arrogant. And I had the means to fix what none of you could even see. Dad finally looked up, eyes lost. What happens now? That's up to you, I said, shutting my laptop. You've just disowned the one person keeping this family afloat. You can double down on that decision, or you can wake up. I stood, smoothing my blazer. The trust is dead weight. I've built something that could actually sustain the next 4 generations, but it requires vision, not nostalgia. Victoria's eyes were wet with tears. Isabella. I'm so sorry, we never knew. No, you didn't want to know. You assumed wealth was loud, that simplicity meant failure. You confused humility with weakness. Marcus stood too, slowly. What can we do? He asked. How do we fix this? You start by learning the truth, that power doesn't always wear a tailored suit, that success doesn't always look like privilege, and that the person you underestimated the most might just be the one holding everything together. I gathered my things as their silence followed me, not rejection this time, recognition. For the record, I said, pausing at the door, the financial support will continue, because I'm not doing this for approval. I'm doing it because someone has to lead, and it turns out that someone is me. I was halfway to the door when I said it. Because that's what family should do. But next time you try to cut someone off, make sure you know who's actually been paying the bills. Dad's voice stopped me. Isabella, wait. I turned. Can you teach us? Show us what you built? How you did it? For the first time that day, I smiled, genuinely. I'd like that, Dad. I've been waiting years for you to ask. 1 month later, I sat in the same conference room, but everything was different. The family trust was now under my oversight. Marcus had become a student again, eager to learn real-world finance. Victoria had joined my nonprofit, helping people understand money in ways she never had herself. And my father, the man who once lectured me about responsibility, now asked thoughtful questions about risk tolerance and diversification. These Q3 numbers look excellent, he said, scanning the reports I'd prepared. This sustainable investment strategy is outperforming everything we tried over the last 20 years. That's because it's grounded in real market dynamics, I replied, not legacy thinking. The markets don't care about family names, they care about smart decisions. Victoria looked up from her screen. I still can't believe we didn't know any of this. How did you keep Meridian so separate from the Whitmore name? Compartmentalization, shell corporations, a paper trail that never intersected with family finances. I learned early that mixing business with legacy usually ends in disaster. Marcus chuckled. Working with you these past few weeks has taught me more than my entire MBA. That's because MBAs teach theory, I said. Building wealth? That's learned in the field, with skin in the game. Dad placed his papers down and looked straight at me. Isabella. I owe you an apology, not just for what happened last month, but for all the years I didn't really see you. Victoria nodded. We all do. I was so obsessed with appearances, I never stopped to understand the substance. I remembered the years I'd spent being underestimated, dinner conversations where I was talked over, decisions made as if I wasn't in the room. But now they were listening. The important thing, I said, is that we're here now, building something better, together. My phone buzzed, a message from my assistant. 3 more high-net-worth clients want to transfer portfolios. Words getting out. Speaking of building, I said, Meridian is scaling faster than I expected. We need to make a decision, stay boutique and selective, or expand and compete with the top-tier firms. Dad leaned forward, energized. What do you think? I looked at the people who had once cut me off, now hanging on every word about strategy and sustainability. I think we have a foundation strong enough to carry the Whitmore name forward for another 100 years, not just preserve it from the last one. Victoria smiled. I like the sound of that. Then let's get to work, I said, opening my laptop. I'll show you what building real wealth looks like. As I outlined the expansion plans, I felt it clearly. The family that once saw me as the weak link, now saw me as the anchor. They tried to strip me of a trust fund, but I'd built something they could never take away. A thriving company, a legacy of my own, and a family that finally saw my worth. Because sometimes, the best response to being cut off isn't begging to be let back in. It's proving you were never dependent on their approval to begin with. And sometimes, the most powerful revenge isn't vengeance at all. It's success so undeniable, your critics become your students. The next morning, I arrived at Meridian HQ to find an email waiting from Dad. Subject, a humble request. Isabella. After reviewing everything you've built, I have just one question. Would you consider letting me work for you? I want to learn what real financial leadership looks like. Your proud father. Charles. I smiled and typed my reply. Dad. You've been working for me for 5 years. You just didn't know it. Welcome to the team. Your daughter. The CEO. Outside my office window, the city stretched out, buzzing, endless, full of possibility. Somewhere out there, other families were clinging to outdated systems. Other trust funds were bleeding. Other daughters were being dismissed, misunderstood, underestimated. I had work to do, wealth to grow, a legacy to redefine. Because the girl they once tried to cut off from the family trust had become the woman who saved